Markets are markets and they go up and down. So why is the housing market different this time and why won't we see a big collapse like 2008? Stick around for the video and we'll get into a bunch of reasons why. Good morning. My name is Adam Kahn and I'm the Rational Investor. Today is October 25th, Wednesday. I hope you're all doing well. Before I get into the reasons why I don't see a big housing crash coming, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe. Feel free to make comments. I know a lot of you don't agree with me and you see a big collapse coming. I'm happy to discuss it. I also plan to put a couple of links in the description on how to open an account at SoFi. If you guys deposit $10 or more into a checking or savings account, they'll give you a free $25. And similarly, if you open a stock account, they'll also give you a free $25 as well. And who doesn't like free money? Because to be honest, the reason I put it in there is I open an account with my son who's 12 years old, and they give him a small gift as well, and he gets really excited about that. And I really appreciate the support as well. It says a lot, and I think that's really kind of you. I also want you to know I use SoFi myself. I also use E-Trade. I don't want you to think I'm putting something in there that I don't personally use. More importantly, though, is the thumbs up and the subscribing. It helps the analytics for YouTube and it gets the content out there. So if you guys appreciate what I'm talking about, I appreciate that support because it helps to grow the channel, which is really nice. To be perfectly honest, I'm thrilled at how well we've done so far. We've broken through 1,000 subscribers, which is so cool to me. I do this for fun and because I like investing. I like real estate. I like stock market and things like that. I've done some videos on passive income for dividend investing, which is what I move into as well. Anyway, let me get into the reasons why I don't really see a big housing correction this time. I don't want that heard the wrong way. While I don't see a big housing correction, what I will recognize is that in time, markets always make sense. And right now, I would argue that maybe things are too expensive, but I don't know if that means that we will stagnate here for a long time and be too expensive until it's no longer too expensive and it makes more sense, or if there'll be some price decreases and rate decreases to make it make more sense, or how it'll play out. But I really don't see a big crash like 2008. The main reason I don't see that is because of 2008, the banks don't want to own a bunch of houses and they've learned their lesson of how to offset it and what to do. There are programs that are much better now and put in place that they've learned how to offset the big sales that might come in. So there's forbearance and other things, and people will be able to reevaluate their loan process in order to not have to drop the house on the banks. They don't want to own it. The other thing that's different that I went into detail into one of my other videos is the loans are different. Even the 1% down and the 3% conventional and 3.5% FHA, you have to qualify for these loans and you have to be well qualified. I help with mortgages too, and I think about when I was working 8, 10 years ago versus the clients I see now. For the most part, and I don't want to overgeneralize, and I'm not a huge portion of the mortgage volume. I just see the business I see. But my clients have transformed to hourly employees with rough credit that were able to put a little bit of money down to high credit, putting down large down payments with high paying W-2 jobs. It's hard to see where they'll run into issues unless the unemployment gets out of control, where they can't afford the homes. So I just don't see a big influx of inventory the way that it was last time when you had the option arm loans in place that had seasoned and the payments went up a whole lot at the same time the prices came down. If price is correct again, I don't foresee a lot of people who have super strong credit giving up those homes and ruining their credit just because they're upside down on the home and maybe it's not valued quite where it was with what they paid. I also don't see the huge amount of foreclosures. I see a more natural ebb and flow of that. Even when you add in the Airbnb investors and the people who might be overextended, Yeah, of course, they're going to learn that overextended is a problem and they might lose their homes, but there's generally a certain amount of people losing homes. And if there's people looking to pick them up, which there is, the demand is there. It's not like there's no demand and everybody just doesn't want to buy. There's plenty of demand. People just think it's expensive, so they're waiting a little bit. Well, if there's some foreclosures, the demand on the sideline will be happy to pick those up, especially if they can get good deals on those homes. If you watched Jerome Powell's speech last week, he's seen an uptick in unemployment. He's seen the amount of jobs available for those unemployed decrease. And he's seen some things, which is what they've been looking for to indicate that they likely won't have to continue to raise rates, that the market's working itself out. In fact, they're probably more likely to start cutting rates. And the other thing I find is that in an election year, the economy usually does pretty well, not just from the spending that the politicians are doing for the election, but also the incumbents don't want to have any problems in the economy. So they do whatever they can to try to help keep it moving along so that maybe they get reelected. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is not anything like that, but just common sense that if I'm the president and I want to get reelected, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the economy doesn't have some big collapse. Unfortunately, what I do see is that the wealth distribution is getting worse and worse, and the wealthy are getting much more wealthy, and the other end is struggling harder. I mean, I went down to the casino last week, and I live here in Las Vegas, and they were mobbed. And I said to a friend of mine, I like to play poker. What I can't believe is the size of the games and how much they've grown. I hadn't gone in a while, and I went down, and generally when I used to play, the biggest game at the Wynn, which is where I go, is a 5-10 game. And most people buy in for $2,000 or $3,000, and maybe somebody buys in for 10,000. Well, they've pushed where they have a 10-20 game, and sometimes they get a 25-50 or even 50-100. And my God, people are buying in for 10, 20, 30, $50,000, and it seems like a whole table of them. I'm not really sure where the wealth has come from, but there seems to be a lot more money around, which is also why I think they're sitting on the sidelines waiting for good deals. And I don't see this huge influx of homes, even with the Airbnbs and the investors. The investors probably put 25% down. If you're looking at debt servicing loans and bank statement loans and the things that people are pointing to, saying that they're crazy loans, most of them require 20 or 25% down, as well as good credit. Whereas if we go back to 2007 and 6 and 5, you didn't need those things, and you could borrow money to put your down payment down, on top of the fact that you could lie about your income and you could lie about your assets. It was just a different scenario. The other thing is, it's always different. Things are never the same. While it is possible we see some price reductions and rate reductions, I think it's going to be softer this time. I think if the housing really starts to correct, that is when the Fed comes in and reverses on their rates rather quickly. They're not going to want to see a bunch of foreclosures and a bunch of unemployment. They just want to see the economy slow down, and I think that's what they're getting. Don't get me wrong, I hate the inflation too. I hate that things are more expensive. It really does suck. And I actually don't know that we'll even see the price reductions. I think we'll see some extraneous sales of people who are stuck and they sell cheap. But there was a time in California where prices were just too high and the market sat there for a long time. And it just took time before those prices made sense and the economy caught up to the higher prices. You know, the average household income right now to buy the average home has to be $115,000. I agree with all the gloom and doomers that that is a big stretch. Where I don't agree is I don't see a collapse to make it make more sense. I see us stagnating for a long time to work through that until it does make more sense. Markets are markets. They go up, they go down, but I just don't see a 2008 terrible world collapse. There's too much, people are doing too well. Companies are making more money, and so are people. Their jobs seem okay. So I don't see the Fed pushing it so far that the unemployment gets out of control. When I talk to friends who aren't in the real estate business, their jobs are super busy. The people, I have a couple friends who do property management that can barely keep up and are still in the same position where they're having trouble finding employees. They say it has gotten a little bit better and they do find people, but it is still difficult. And my comment about the casino, I was floored. You couldn't even find a parking space. So I think we're slowing down. I don't know that I see it. I just think that places are still busy and the economy is doing okay, which is wonderful. When we went out of town this summer, I had seen we went to Asia. I had seen some places that looked like they had completely overbuilt, and that looked a little bit more to me like 2008. We were in Vietnam and Ha Long Bay in particular, and some others. They had built these incredible new structures, but there's nobody there to buy them, and they're just sitting empty. I think they could have some real stress on those economies. I don't see the overbuilding here, and maybe that's specific to Las Vegas. You have to recognize that real estate in particular is very set in that region. We've had a lot of growth in the city, and we haven't overbuilt from what I've seen. We have new sports teams coming to town. The Sphere is huge. Like the city is legitimately growing, and we're getting new employees coming in with different types of jobs than just the casino. Well, that growth is legitimate and part of why I don't see our housing just correcting for no reason. When I moved here in 2005, I picked Las Vegas because I thought it was undervalued and you got a lot for your money. I recognize that that's changed, but I think it's legitimately changed. I don't think it's because we've, gotten out of control like 2007 and 8. Credit card debt has hit over $1 trillion, and the interest rates on those are out of control. I'm sure some people are stretched, but there's also some real obvious reasons why it's gone up into the highest levels, which is the inflation. If you used to charge $50 on your credit card and now you're charging 70 or 80, well, the balances are bigger and there's going to be more debt than there was before. Similar to what I said about the housing market, if you're overstretched and you can't afford it, those who are leveraged are going to feel that pain, and there'll be some issues from that, and there'll be some bankruptcy, and there'll be some people who can't afford those bills, and they'll feel the pain of being overextended. But I don't think it's a majority of the economy like it was back then. That zero down and borrowing money to put your down payment and lying about your income and your assets, that was a big problem. You're not able to do that currently. And yes, well, I think we were overextended and the prices got a little ahead of themselves. I don't see what's going to put us in the position where they collapse. Now, even the commercial real estate where it should collapse, again, I'll point back to what the banks and everybody learned in 2008. I picture a scenario where the banks sit in limbo with their clients who own the commercial real estate. They're not going to want to own trillions of dollars of commercial properties. They're really not. So if they have a landlord who's making their payments and keeping up along the current loan that they have, I think they're likely to just go out of that loan and let them be month to month or give them a 6 month extension, then tell them, gee, sorry, you don't qualify for a new loan. I'm going to tell a story about a friend of a friend of mine because he didn't want to be noted, who got into the healthcare business and he owned a lot of properties. He got older and he's semi-retired. He sold almost all of them, but still has 3 of them left. Well, they're up for a new mortgage and the contract's up with the bank. So they said, hey, it's time we talk about this. He goes down to the bank. He's got his current rents, and with the higher interest rates, they say, well, we're sorry, it doesn't qualify for a mortgage. And as I said, he's semi-retired, and he kind of says, okay, no problem. You guys can have the keys. And the bank literally said, no, 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 no. We don't want the property. We'll have to figure something out. And he says, okay, well, then give me a new loan. We'll figure it out. And he can afford to pay it at the higher interest rate if needed as well. And their response is, I don't know what to tell you. You don't qualify for the loan. And he almost laughed and said, well, you tell me what you want to do. And in current state, they just have him making his old payments at the lower mortgage rates until they figure it out. They really don't want his properties. And I think on a larger scale, that's going to be the case. They're not going to bankrupt themselves, and they're not going to become landlords. So they're going to wait until it makes more sense, and then they'll reevaluate when it makes more sense. Uh, Otherwise, yeah, I see the same problem everyone else does, which is when those mortgages roll and they don't qualify for a new mortgage, the prices would have to come down to make a mortgage make sense. Well, they probably don't want to crash the economy. They'll find a solution. It may not be forbearance and it may not be other things. They may just allow them to continue as long as everybody's content until they can afford to refinance them. Well, do me a favor, have a great day. Don't forget to do the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And by all means, make your comments. Like I said, I know a lot of you disagree with what I think. I'm happy to discuss it and go into detail or argue back and forth. I know the data points are really good. So, bye, guys.